Welcome. Super excited today to have Evan Erikson with us. Evan is the CEO of TexPower, a company commercializing cobalt-free lithium-ion battery technology that's higher in energy than other technologies without sacrifices to safety, cycle life, or compatibility with existing technologies. Also, huge shout out because Evan has done postdoc work and spun out of UT Austin. I went to UT for undergrad and business school. And so always excited to see Longhorns getting into the climate tech space. So thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's really great to be here.
Yeah. Tell us why it's important to be cobalt free.
Okay, so cobalt, currently all high energy batteries use cobalt in them. There's cobalt-free alternatives, but they're lower in energy. But cobalt's a huge issue because it's mined primarily in Central Africa. It's costly. It's not prevalent throughout the world as much as other metals such as nickel. And so it's a huge supply chain issue. China bought up a lot of the mining. Actually, they refine more than 80% of the cobalt that goes into batteries. And so, we've seen the supply chain kind of crash out these last few years. And so, it's very much on everybody's mind as we go into the future. And as we grow the EV industry, there may not even be enough cobalt to supply unless there's changes to cathodes. And so that's why, we were working on low cobalt cathode materials at UT Austin. And conventional wisdom is that you need cobalt for them to operate. But we saw that it was working. And so we were surprised, said, wow. And then we tried without cobalt. And it was still working. So we thought, wow, this is a huge opportunity. And we decided, okay, it's in the lab of Professor Arumugan Montharam, and then also co-founder Dr. Wang Li is the lead inventor of the material. And so we decided to make a company and spun it out. And, it's been a crazy and wild tumble ever since. And yeah.
And how did you decide, now is the time, the technical risks had been overcome and you had to do it today?
Actually, a lot of it came to funding. Mm-hmm. So if you know these small business investment research grants, SBIRs, so we made the company. We first got a large DOE grant for academia to fund it, and then that kind of initiated the research. We'd been working on it before, but once we got the SBIR funding, then I could afford to quit the job and try and do it, and wanted to continue working at UT. And then we sort of had a collaboration between the two companies. And then later on got more funding. It got the phase 2 and then a DOD grant for prototype actually development, an OTA. We don't want to get into all the different contractual mechanisms of the DOD. It gets messy, but yeah, it was
acronyms galore.
Yeah, other transactional authority, I believe it's called. Yeah. So that's another podcast. I think a whole nother podcast just on acronyms all day long.
Yeah.
So
let's get a little nerdy. So it's not like you just have this cathode material. You can say I'm going to take the cobalt out. What is the science that allows us to do this that just didn't exist before? Mm-hmm. When you say you're kind of manipulating material, kind of walk us through it.
Yeah. Okay. So just a background on cathodes. And so cathodes are the most expensive component of lithium-ion batteries, about 40%. So they're very important for the battery, and it's primarily the cost is primarily in the metals themselves. So production costs maybe 7% of the cathode, which is good because then production costs are not large. We could make them in the U.S., but the issue with cobalt is that it started off the initial cathode that Professor John Goodenough had invented. That's where Professor Arumugan Montharam, our co-founder, longtime colleague of his, and worked in his labs since Oxford, and then at UT, and then became a professor, and very good relationship. Even gave the Nobel lecture for him in 2019.
And to be clear, the first gentleman won a Nobel Prize for inventing lithium-ion batteries, essentially. Right?
Yeah, him and Yoshino, and then in New York now, Binghamton. I'm blanking on the name now. Yeah. The conventional wisdom. Then you have the lithium cobalt oxide. And so people decided that, okay, we're going to start mixing Nickel and manganese was kind of first. You mix with a nickel cobalt manganese cathode, and then also a nickel cobalt aluminum cathode. They're kind of two different types of materials that are commercially viable for EVs, and that's what they use right now. So for high energy EVs, there's a cobalt-free one, this lithium iron phosphate, but that's a lower in energy system. So it's good for short range, but maybe for the US market, the high energy materials will be preferred. So they would replace the cobalt with this nickel and, sort of in a stepwise fashion and slowly increasing it. Because if you have pure nickel, there's bulk instabilities and surface instabilities.
What does that mean?
So you have a certain crystal structure for these battery cathodes. It's a layered structure, and what happens? You can make a rock salt structure where it's no longer layered. You have a lithium layer where lithium comes out of the cathode material, and then it goes back in during the cycling.
That's literally the ion piece,
yeah.
right? Like the things are moving around as the battery discharges and charges.
Yeah. So lithium is actually just a charge carrier. It's not what's oxidized and reduced are the either graphite at the anode or these transition metals. So cobalt or nickel. And so what they do is they replace the cobalt in kind of a stepwise fashion. You sort of get to 50%, 60%, 70%, 80%, and that's how the industry has been doing it. And so there's the two types of cathodes are nickel, cobalt, aluminum, and like Tesla, the original batteries were this type of chemistry. And then NCM is nickel, cobalt, manganese. So if you smash them together, you take out the cobalt, then you have nickel, manganese, aluminum, and that's our core technologies. And the conventional wisdom is that it's really difficult to synthesize without the cobalt in there. That was the thoughts, and a lot of it had to do with synthetic control. And so if you look at the old papers, for lithium nickel oxide, the energy densities are way, one reports 120 milliamp hours per gram, and then another one reports 200, and all over the place 80 milliamp hours per gram. So this specific energy is how you measure it by mass, how much there's a voltage that you multiply it by as well. But so if everybody thought, okay, it's too difficult to synthesize, and so then that's why you add these other metals that can improve the synthesis. And so we had, based on in Rom's lab, how you make these cathode materials is you do co-precipitation and calcination. So it's very, very difficult synthesis technique. Actually, in North America, there's only apart from Professor Montheram's group, there was only Jeff Don's group in Nova Scotia that do this, and he does it at a smaller scale. People are expanding now, but usually what people would do if they want to work on a cathode, you would purchase commercial cathodes that's already synthesized, and you dope it a little bit, but you don't change the core composition. And in Europe, they had BASF. They fund almost every research group for cathode materials. And so I was working in Israel at the time for a postdoc, and we were working on BASF materials. And so they say, okay, you can do whatever you want with it, but you're working on BASF materials. So it's sort of stifled research, And of course, there are groups that don't do that, and great groups in Europe like Tarscone and many others. But for the most part, that controls the what people focus on. There's money.
So what you're saying, the history of this company is really interesting to me, that conventional wisdom and most of the industry is going this way, and you guys were like, no, let's prove them wrong. If everyone says go right, we're going to go left. Like, what was that like? Isn't that a little bit scary, daunting? You must have like good risk tolerance and adventure.
I mean, for us, it was fairly low, financial risk. At first, we were as an academic group, so we can, of course, they want you to kind of leapfrog what's going on right now. And the DOE recognized this looming problem with cobalt. And so they funded us very well. And so, and then once we formed the company, they knew who we are, and have the bona fides and whatnot. And so, to jump ship and say, okay, I'm going to try this for a year. My wife, okay, I got a salary, honey. She's not going to, we had a 6-year-old at the time, so or no, 3-year-old, now 6-year-old, I
Yep.
think, or maybe 2 at the
Mm.
time. I don't know, but
And in terms of where the company is today, like if I recall, you've raised millions of dollars, and you're actually building a facility right up here on Brentmore, right?
yeah,
Tell
just
us
down
about
the
that.
road. So it's I didn't know about uh, this part over here. You got such a beautiful facility,
Yeah,
and it's part of the great Houston scene. But
Yeah.
yeah,
tell us about what you're building.
so after spinning out the company, you start off kind of gram level synthesis in laptop, benchtop chemistry. And so the next step is you got to get to kilos,
Mhm.
because you got to sample people, customers. We make the cathode. We need somebody to make the cells. And so if you find a partner that make them many different cell manufacturers, I shouldn't got NDAs. I can't disclose stuff. Okay, so public stuff is we worked with 24M
Okay.
on some projects,
Good.
and so that's one, for example. So say we give 24M, we make the best cathode material that we can make, highest energy density, and we give it to 24M, who has this ultra high energy density style cell. They put that in there, and we get record breaking energy densities in our cell design. So for instance, made something more than 500 watt hours per kilogram.
Mm.
Current batteries, commercial batteries, like 225
Yeah.
watt hours per
That's big.
kilogram. So it's proof of concept. Don't put that in a car right now, guys. You're gonna. I wouldn't put my
Yeah.
family on sitting on top of that, but it's doable. And there are ways. Then the next steps: how do you stabilize that? How do you make it safer? How do you And so that's one avenue for kind of niche products that we're going towards.
And I think the thing that's challenging here, and why you're kind of speaking hesitantly about production, is batteries sometimes catch on fire, and safety is such an important piece of making these things commercial. And I know one of the value propositions is you remove the cobalt and it's still safe, right? But there's a lot of steps to get ready for production. We have to validate safety, right?
Yeah, and we tune the material, so that's for that is the ultra high energy design. Now the applications for that, like such as EVs, and we're working with some automotive partners. We're not giving them this cathode material because that's not, they're not interested in that. That has to be 24M. The project was the DoD. They want to see a prototype with the highest energy density possible, and then we go from there. Whereas EVs, of course it has to be safe. So you usually the sacrifice is cycle life and safety are pretty much correlated. So you sacrifice some energy density, you get a more safe and longer life battery. So cycle is you charge and discharge. That's a cycle. So that's, sorry if I'm throwing out nomenclature, guys.
No, this is perfect.
Let's talk about crystallography and R3 No.
So okay, well, not the engineer here. I have so many questions, but I'm really interested in like just this idea of saying we're gonna like find a different way to do something that everybody else is doing one way. That you're doing it in Texas, amazing. Texas gets a ton of energy research. Texas universities get a ton of energy research. You don't see that many startups coming out of Texas universities because that research goes traditionally other places. So like how you talked about how like you got funding from the DOE. What made you say, hey, we're going to spin this out?
I mean, actually, it's true that Austin is behind in the Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is the model that they're exporting to create all these startups. And when I did my PhD at Illinois, never even thought about a startup. How could you make your own company? It's but in Austin they have this Office of Technology Commercialization, and they're working towards building a community there, and so they kind of came and talked to us like, okay, you've got these ideas it has huge commercial relevance. If you make a patent and you spin it out, there's funding here. Here's how you get the funding, and funding is available. If you guys want to make a startup, you can message me too. Doing grants is like, if you know how to write a grant, that's how you can seed your company. And there's so much money out there for it. They require for these SBIRs a certain percentage from every part of the government. And so the DoD, DOE, EPA, NSF, they've all got SBIR funds, and they come out with these calls on like a quarterly basis, and just every single agency, and they all work differently. They all have different rules, and it gets messy. But you can find a call that matches your technology, and that's what they helped us do. And
so the University of Texas came to you and said, "Ooh, you're doing battery research. We like this, right?" Do you think that is because batteries are like one of the biggest topics, technology areas of our time right now?
Yeah, I mean, they're nurturing other technologies, but certainly, I mean, it's a good time to be in the battery business.
They came to you with dollar signs in their eyes. You're like,
yeah. I mean, it's right time, right place is a huge factor in all of this. I as a young family, you don't think, oh, I'm gonna it's a good time to start a company, and so I guess if you're listening to this now, maybe you're thinking about it, and it's definitely something I would suggest. It's a crazy tumble. You don't know what you're doing most of the time, and you find out, as you go. So you have problems, and the thing is about networking. And what I like about the community here, with you guys, is there's the ION, Greentown Labs, and here in the Cannon, there's a huge network in most cities. Houston is very deep with funding and with. And if you want to do a real tough tech or whatever you want to call it, like real make something, Houston's the place to be. We always joke, Austin, it's great. I don't want to, but it's for dating apps. If you want to make.
Okay, you said this, not me. Although I have said that exact analogy. I've made that analogy before, right? And so I went to UT for undergrad and grad school. When I was in business school, I remember seeing the folks who were studying entrepreneurship on the other side of the auditorium and being like, I have no idea what they do. I'm over here with the energy finance folks, right? Because in my mind, like that was the energy industry. So tells you I went to business school a while ago, but I think like what you just said right now, it's like a little bit of like a wild ride, but it's a really good time to be on that ride. And that this is part of what we have to do is change the narrative to all of the future energy leaders, is that you can go work for the energy majors, the incumbents, the companies that we all know, but you can also go start your own company. And that is just as important and impactful and lucrative potentially, right? And that we need that new technology. Yeah. So I love that. But then I also love that you said you ended up in Houston, and that there is such a difference in starting a dating app and starting an energy company, right? Like just not even apples and monkeys. Like we're not comparing even apples and oranges, right? So how did you end up in Houston?
Well, if I'm totally honest, my wife got a job at BP, and that said, and my co-founder at the time was just us two, and he saw that I was drowning in diapers, and because I had my daughter, because I had she had the real job, and so for a year we were in Austin still and struggling and trying to start a business when you have a 3-year-old is pretty brutal, and so he was kind enough to come with, and we made it here. But to be honest, at the time, Austin's infrastructure and it's getting better. So I don't want to say, I made a joke about Austin. Austin's great, guys. So don't send hate mail. Also, I was postdoc at UT. So, maybe the A&M guys are like, but I mean, like trying to find like fume hoods. Fume hoods are, if you want to have a chemistry based, startup, you need a fume hood. And so if you only have a $200,000 from an SBIR, that's not enough to build your own lab. You got to have some infrastructure there that you could rent. And Houston, with the oil and gas sector here, I mean, this is a chemist's playground. You got at UH, they have the Schlumberger had donated their whole campus to the university, and they're turning it into startup space. It's called the Technology Bridge, and you can rent space there. And that's where we ended up going. To build space, and I know Greentown Labs has some chemical space, and they're building it out. Also, one of the medical places. So
TMC.
Yeah. So there's here you've got it, and you've got all kinds of. I think Halliburton Labs is building something, and people know how to do chemistry here. And when we're looking for employees, we scoop somebody from KBR that's a process engineer, because of course I'm a benchtop chemist. I don't know what I'm doing for scaling up, and so you can get people that actually know how to do industrial scale manufacturing. Like this is what we need, and it's in Houston, and so there's money because of the oil and gas. That's important. There's all kinds of great talent here, and there's a great community. So I think, okay, I moved because my wife came down. No matter what, that family is more important than anything, right? But it's been a great decision to move down here.
It was meant to be.
Oh yeah.
The chemistry gods were pulling you this way.
And I'm hearing you on the cost, right? Like I was meeting with an entrepreneur in the Easton Maker Hub. They were building, I think it was one fume hood and a bunch of benches, and they had budgeted $110,000 to build this thing out. And when you say you have a $200,000 grant, you don't even have enough left over for payroll after that if you have to build your own wet lab.
Yeah.
So it's definitely fantastic to have those resources here in the city. And you ended up at Techbridge, right? That was
yeah.
And how was that experience over there?
Oh, great. They've got such beautiful facilities. It's almost
it's huge.
It's almost brand new. I mean, now we've kind of grown out of it, and we expand a bit too much, so we're getting some. Okay, come on, guys, it's time we got a new crop that has to grow in.
Yep.
And so then we're actually building the lab right here on Brittmore, and a pilot. We've got a 3-ton per annum production facility that's going in. Should be okay. Equipment delays, COVID, all that stuff. We're getting equipment from China, and but yeah, March, April time frame, we'll have operating lab just up the road. Always looking for chemists, for engineers, so you can look on our webpage about that. And then next, so this spring we're looking to raise for the 100 megawatt hour production facility. To put that in a framework, that's about 17,000 cars. So worth of cathode.
So you gave me a couple numbers. So you just said 3 tons per year, and then you went over to megawatt hour. So kind of put those in the same, dimensionless, matter for me.
So 3 tons is 2 megawatt hours of cathode. So
5 times bigger. Is the next one.
50. Yeah. So
yes.
So this scale, it's not quite EV scale. The size we're building, but for niche applications, you've got DoD applications, drones, power tools, electric toothbrushes, all kinds of different things that require high energy batteries. And so, and then you can charge a bit of a premium because, of course, at a smaller scale, it's about 3 times more expensive for the production side. So it's only about 20% of the cost of the cathode. So it's not, a huge increase over industrial scale, EV scale. So, we looked at the numbers. I was pleasantly surprised. We can actually do this in Texas, I think, if we, make a cathode. And of course, other companies. There's one in the road. We might have heard of them, but maybe they don't mention their name. In Austin, they're building some cathode facility. So the economics are there, guys. And so we're,
So I want to talk about that because with the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a lot of incentives now that weren't here before for domestic manufacturing, and you can kind of layer them on depending on where you are. So there's lots of companies are going to places like West Virginia, Appalachia, mine country for political reasons, but also like that's a target area. But so are energy communities, and like all of Texas is an energy community, but definitely Houston. Does the IRA play into any of your plans?
Well, of course I love writing grants, and it's
right.
This is I'm great at paperwork. I got my wife her green card and citizenship just without a lawyer. Just did it all myself. That's the practice. And then absolutely the bipartisan infrastructure law. So the DOE, huge amounts of money that they're putting into it. So this is serious. They're serious that it's going to happen. There was, I think, $7 billion for cell, cathode, other component anodes, electrolyte production. $5 billion for electric buses. So for electrifying our school buses and things like that, and then also for $5 billion for chargers. I mean, this is serious investment, and so it's and the thing is, China's been doing this for decades. So it's good that we've recognized it and we're making the decision. We're going to go all in, and we're going to catch up. And the thing is, we can leapfrog.
Mhm.
We can skip go to the next generation materials, the next generation cells, next generation electrolytes. It's it's a very exciting time to be in the battery industry. It's
So you're just like hitting refresh on the DOE as they put out their FOAs and their things, and you're like, yes, yes, because there are so many coming out, and I do feel, I mean, like, anything with storage and with batteries is one of their focus areas. So that is great, and we do need more companies like that coming to Houston because we are so focused on manufacturing as a community that we have a lot of resources, and it's great for me as a Houstonian to see new cleaner types of energy companies being here so we can build up that part of our community.
Yeah, I mean, the EV revolution in the U.S. is not going to happen without Houston.
Mm.
This is where everything is. All the chemistry is done, right? Like this is the big area for that. So,
Yes.
I mean, it's a great place to be, and to find the talent to make the manufacturing happen. It's got to be from here. You can. I mean, there's places people want to move to California and places like that, but where can you find process engineers that there's how many thousands are here?
Mhm.
It's the place to be for.
What surprised you about
Yeah.
Houston? Coming from Austin, Austin is great. We'll say this a million times. It is. But the great things about Houston are often like really surprising that people are like, I had no idea, or I
What-
just love.
What's the hidden gem?
Yeah.
I mean, the community here is great. I mean, and I had gone a lot to the Capital Factory in Austin, and they've got a great community there, and you can learn. I mean, the nice thing is they walk you as you form a company and you don't know what you're doing. You're like, okay, I'm doing all my accounting in Excel. It's like, I'm dying. I got to manage a grant. This is direct cost, indirect cost, unallowed.
Yeah.
So you go to these communities and just talk to people, and in a 5-minute conversation you can get it solved. And in Houston, the community is even larger than Austin, and they work in fields that are, how do you make that actually get built, so it's a really robust community with multiple centers. And so this is what was very surprising, because all right, my wife's going down here. That's that's why I moved, and then took a leap of faith, but excellent decision. I think Houston's the place to be, guys, and great food, of course. Okay, there's good barbecue in Austin, but if you want pho, if you want Chinese, if you want it's got the most diversity in America, right? By some counts. I don't know how do you do that metric, but if you want to have international foods, you can come to anything you want.
How do you feel about breakfast tacos?
Okay, right.
Important energy transition topic, but I'm also hungry. So
okay.
I feel like that is an important part of our entrepreneurial ecosystem here.
Yeah, breakfast
tacos.
So you're trying to convince Jason that you need to invest in breakfast tacos for the staff, is what you're saying, and you have to justify this extra cost. I mean, how much is that?
There used to be this fantastic breakfast taco place right next to the embassy. No more. But what are you going to do? When you think about like your journey through here in Houston, were there any things that were missing where you're just like, I wish we had this here in Houston?
Oh, so the one thing I'll complain about, if that's what this is about complaining, right? So we don't need any more lanes in I-10, and that transition from I-10 to 45, it's just brutal, going south to UH. I had to do that. We started our lab during the pandemic, and we built our house in the energy or bought a house in the energy corridor. So I was like, oh, it's a 20-minute drive, no problem. I can do this every day. And then on Fridays, it's like an hour and a half sometimes. And so this is my complaint about Houston. So let's get some mass transit here that extends out. Let's let's make a walkable city, guys.
Yeah, when I was working up on 290, I would just go home late because I just don't want to sit in traffic, and I'd rather take a nap or work. And it's just for whatever reason, Houstonians do find it acceptable to sometimes commute 90 minutes, and it's just like I don't know where all the time comes from. But part of the challenge, of course, is Houston's large. It's a city built for people with cars, right? And when the roads go up, people find ways to fill them.
Yeah.
Right? And that's just a unique Houstonian challenge.
Mm.
So,
Bringing it back to batteries.
yes.
So also having worked on public transit in Houston, trying to get us to have trying to get us to have electric buses. Now, Metro, which runs the Houston region bus system, has started to make investments in electric buses. Very excited about that. It's been a long time. Many other cities have made the switch or are starting to make the switch. But one of the reasons why our community has been has taken longer is that Houston is so big, and that is hard for bus batteries. Houston, like the city, is 670 square miles, but like Metro covers counties and counties and counties. It's really hot. You're in traffic. You have a lot of people. Sometimes we are driving buses through floodwaters. Like they have a lot of obstacles that you wouldn't have other places. As you work on batteries, is that something that you think about? I know you said electric toothbrushes, which is probably the opposite of a bus, but just in the industry in general, do you see changes coming so that buses that go a really long way in places like Houston would be more, I don't want to say acceptable because that's not the right word, but like we have a low risk tolerance here because you don't want to strand people on buses. Like you don't want to have buses break down. No one wants to invest in something that can only go a short period of time.
So like maybe said another way, like, right, like classically with EVs, there's always range anxiety, right? With buses, it seems like there's more of a risk around range anxiety. Are there other requirements that you're seeing with kind of public transit battery systems?
Yeah, I mean, so for range, you can always just add more batteries, and so that's what they do for. I mean, it makes it much more heavy and more expensive, and part of the future of battery development will be, reducing nickel, and once we get the cobalt out, then reduce nickel, and then go to more affordable batteries, and the range. Then you can have more batteries in there, and it will cost the same, more range. But yeah, and if distance and then also AC is the killer for that. But to be honest, if you have a bus system, the range that you're going, you have the schedule, so it can be done. It's done in other places, and it just maybe they have to change it. But 300-mile bus range should be doable. So it should be doable in Houston. I mean, the early buses they want to do mini cycles. So this lithium iron phosphate is the low energy version. And so I was living in Tel Aviv, and Tel Aviv is very small. Nice thing is, the top speed that you go there for the average speed, it was like 14 kilometers per hour because traffic is so bad. But anyways, you only go, it's like 10 kilometers north and south. So if you live in those cities, those can be electrified very easily. But as long as you know the route that you're going, you can plan it. And that's what they do, right? At the bus companies, they plan it out. And it's part of the development for a lot of different calls on FOAs and things is to plan out, how do you plan out bus routes in the US? And I think that'll be part of it as well.
And you're exactly right. That is the technological advancement. Because I also know Metro has been looking at this for a very long time, and that they have tested it out and said that didn't work, and then they wait a little while and they test it out again. And so it's exciting that they're starting to say, hey, we actually really like this. But I know our buses go a little bit more than 14 kilometers an hour, and they
not often during these rush hour.
They can go a long way.
Yeah.
And then there's also kind of like an equity component here, because if you just put them in like the downtown, like the inner loop, air quality is one of the biggest factors in public health. And so we actually want the buses to go out into the communities. And they don't even get me started about school buses, which should be electrified first. but they have kind of like the biggest cost constraint in our
Mhm.
public school system. And so I know that's another big Biden administration focus is how can we help electrify school buses? So
Mm.
that will be exciting.
Yeah. I had an engineer in Boston tell me once that a bus was the equivalent of a rolling refrigerator. Not a compliment.
Filled with
But
children.
filled with children. Yes. So Laura had to go, so we're gonna jump back in. But here again with Evan Erickson talking about TexPower. As we think about how climate affects everyone's life, do you have a personal climate story where climate change has affected you?
The winter freeze.
Yeah. So tell us about how the winter freeze affected you.
Yeah, I mean, actually, so many of you have heard about the winter freeze where electricity went down for over the weekend.
This is Freeze Uri. That happened 2 years ago.
Yeah. So actually, we were at TexPower. We were writing a grant at the time that was due during that time, and we were able to do it through, getting in during the deadline. They said, and we even called the DOE and asked them to do an extension. They said, well, we can do an extension, of course, but it has to be post deadline, so it has to get approved then. I said, okay, it's not worth the risk. Let's figure this out. And so we're all in separate parts of the city everyone trying to get the draft and get it going. And we were able to submit, actually. But it was definitely a challenge. And so winterizing power stations is an important thing to do, and that's part of the challenge with more and more extreme weather. Because that's part of the climate change is to fortify all of the power infrastructure. And
has it changed the way you've approached TexPower?
Yeah, I mean, I actually started thinking about solar, so you can put on solar onto and it's great incentives right now. I was looking at it for my house as well with the tax cuts. So, definitely thinking about how you get your power, and afterwards the price we were in some contract for like 4 cents per kilowatt hour, and that company went under because they had pre-priced it. And so then now it's like 14 cents per kilowatt hour. So we went up to this just brutal bill increase on our energy. And we bought the building from someone, and there's a few tenants in there that are using it, but they didn't have to pay for power. So you get, in the end, somebody pays for it. So it's, long-term planning, definitely we as a community, we need to come together and okay, this is happening. And the thing is, in the energy industry, everybody agrees that climate change is happening, and they all know it's coming, and that's why they're investing in the energy transition, because they see the writing on the wall, and this is the way to do business. And wind power is already cheaper than traditional sources in many areas, and solar has its spots too, and it's getting more affordable. And so it's
like we had a similar experience where Yuri, we were out of water and electricity for a few hours, and we made the decision to put solar and a battery on our house, because even though the risk of that happening every year is low, it's just a kind of resilience that we personally wanted to have. And so I'm sure I know a lot of my neighbors also did the same thing. They wanted a house battery because it's a better alternative than, say, a generator system. And that translates to demand for just batteries generally, be it long duration storage, be it residential storage. I think people are realizing there are things they can do, based on their own climate journey to improve their own resilience. So I think a lot of us had that same experience here in Houston. So I think we're getting close to wrapping it up. So as we're talking about climate, do you have an extinct flora or fauna that you would think we got to bring this back? We can.
Yeah. So my buddy sent me a pitch deck that was crazy, and it has for mastodon or mammoths, they want to which okay, maybe it's not crazy. I mean, they find them with hair, they got the DNA. It can be done, right? So, this is really cool. When I saw this, I thought, oh God, if I had some free cash, I'd get a convertible note set up here. That's worth it. I want to see this happen.
Yeah. Would it be like a mammoth that you say that would be cool, or would it be something else?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, just to do it, because we do have so many extinction. It's the next great extinction event is happening now. But anthropogenic caused. Okay, what I'm trying to say words that I can't. But so human caused.
Yeah.
And so learning how to recreate an extinct or revive an extinct animal is a huge skill set. And I don't know how you make that into a company. It sounds like Jurassic Park, maybe.
Yep.
Which I don't know. I'd pay for that too.
Yep.
But
yeah. When we talk about, I think about this audience that we have here, is there anything the audience can do to support you and your goals?
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking for employees. We're chemists, engineers. We've got our webpage is texpowerev.com. We're doing, actively looking out for fundraising. So, contact us. We're going to, help us build cobalt-free EVs in Texas,
Cool. And if people want to reach out to you, should they find you on LinkedIn? Where should they find you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I have Twitter. I have 17 followers now on Twitter, so it's a big deal.
It's a nice prime number.
Don't talk about it much, but
that's good.
My mom's one of them, so I don't know.
Okay,
so
it counts. It counts double, actually.
She actually reads them.
Yeah.
What are you saying?
And if you had some parting thoughts you wanted to share with other innovators out there, what would it be?
I mean, go for it.
Yeah.
Whatever things that are holding you back, it can be scary, but make a plan and do it stepwise. And you've got imposter syndrome, you got something going on that's preventing you. Why not you? And doing big things is just putting it together with little steps, one by one, and it takes a long time, and you'll encounter problems. But you know what? Do you really want that boring corporate job? Okay, the money can be nice, but and it helps to have a wife that also works at one of those, so you're financially stable while you go through the ups and downs of startup life. So I can't speak too much about that if you're
but it's worth it in the end.
Yeah. I mean, in worst case scenario, even if you crash and burn, you've gone through so many experiences, and you put yourself in a pressure cooker, and you come out the other end, and you've gained so many skills that you would never have had doing a regular job. It's really a ton of fun. It's it's a great story. So I'd say go for it.
Go for it. All right. Thanks.